Sometimes it's hard to face reality. Oh, oh.
Welcome to Bhai Chat.
Even though you might get mad at me. Oh, oh. Sometimes it's hard to face reality. Should've been adjusted to my life.
So we talked about one of the reasons people struggle to open up is the fear of judgment. I think people deal with fears on a number of levels. Everyone has fears over so many different things. How can you recognize that your decisions themselves are based on fear?
It's a good question, Neil. So when you feel fear, think about how your body reacts and just kind of feel that. And I'm sure we can all recall moments where, okay, we felt fear and our bodies reacted in a certain way, and it will be different for different people. Maybe your legs start to shake, maybe your hands start to shake, maybe you just feel this sensation, whatever it is inside your body. So that's how you can recognize that you feel some fear. And it's okay to feel fear, but it's about becoming aware, okay, that you're feeling that fear, and then just stopping to ask yourself, is my decision based on fear now, or is it based on something else, on love, which is the opposite of fear? So there's a great quote by Nelson Mandela, and he says, "May your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears." And I find that really powerful, and I remind myself of that every now and again, because I'll say it again, may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears.
I've had a number of challenging experiences in my life. I've dealt with the passing of my father. I've climbed mountains. None of those ever really had any effect on me in terms of physically. But there was a time when I had an argument with a loved one on a subway in New York, and it was the first time I'd ever had a panic attack. And I remember I just started trembling. I had shortness of breath, and we've spoken before about this whole fight or flight. And I remember I just ran. I jumped out of the subway and I ran maybe 4 or 5 blocks, as much as I could, just to get away from that argument. And I don't think I've ever had an altercation where I've felt that kind of need to run as in such an outwardly expressive way. I think sometimes people shut down inside, but it's the first time where I felt that the fear of the argument really challenged my body, and I ran.
Well, it's great awareness, Neil, and so most of us have heard of this fight or flight reaction to fear. So when we were cavemen and hunters and gatherers, if we're faced by a dangerous animal, we had a choice of fighting or running, flight. And that was a useful reaction to fear, otherwise we might die. And even in modern day, of course, there are instances where it could be the equivalent of that physical kind of danger. Yeah, there might be a car heading towards you and you need to be able to react quickly. But a lot of the fear that we feel now is psychological fear. Yeah, it's the fear that we're not good enough. Because pretty much every fear, the fear of failure, fear of rejection, the fear of loss of control, all of those boil down to the fear that we're not good enough. And if we're not good enough, that we won't be loved. And it's interesting, you said your example there of how you reacted on the subway. It's the equivalent of the physical reaction of fight or flight. When it comes to psychological fear, fight, the reaction is anger. And flight, the reaction is to close yourself to people. So you can become very inward bound. So it's the equivalent of fight or flight. you have anger and closing yourself. And it's about becoming aware of that. And so have I just reacted to some fear? So quite often anger is a reaction to some sort of fear.
You talk about anger or closing up. Is there a way that we can be mindful of the fear before we actually react so that we can better deal with situations?
The truth is, this is my opinion, it's you will get angry, yeah? You will get sad sometimes, and that's okay. So you can't necessarily stop the reactions. It's about how long you stay in that space, in that feeling. So that feeling of anger or feeling of sadness, how long are you in that space? So becoming aware helps to reduce the amount of time that you stay angry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's important to be kind to yourself. We are humans. And what makes life so beautiful is our feelings. And so it's okay to have these feelings. And obviously you want more joyous feelings as opposed to negative feelings. But it's okay when you have those negative feelings. And this is all about reducing the time you spend in that space.
Especially in a world filled with social media and constant judgment from others, constant judgment from yourself, not only judgment but also validation, that it very much is the nature of social media. Yes. I know that for myself as a photographer, I've found myself often judging the quality of my work by the number of followers I have, by the number of likes I get, looking at other people's work and then comparing that to myself, and it can be quite a minefield to navigate through. How can we help ourselves in these situations?
Okay, Neil, it's coming back to, remember I said at the very beginning the 4 principles. So one of the principles is don't judge. And can you see now how when we're looking at social media, it's a form of judgment? Yeah, be it a judgment by others based on comparison or judgment of ourselves. And it comes back to becoming aware. All we are simply doing is judging ourselves. And the question I ask myself when I feel that way is this serving me to judge? And then so it comes back to saying, okay, look, there is no right and wrong here. There's simply someone else's perspective. So why are we then judging ourselves based on other people's perspectives? Now you might respect someone else and value their opinion. And it's great to value someone else's opinion and be open-minded about other people's opinions. So what's important to recognize is that, yes, respect everyone. Yeah? They have an opinion and you may want to adopt their opinion as well in terms of your principles. But you don't have to, and no matter what you do, don't judge yourself. Don't make your love for yourself or your respect for yourself conditional on that other person's opinion. So the next time you look at Instagram or Facebook and look at how many likes you got, that's simply someone else's opinion, isn't it? Of whether or not they like you. So are you going to base your happiness on someone else's opinion? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Yeah. And so all I'm really saying is become aware of that and reduce the amount you judge yourself, especially based on other people's opinions, but most importantly, based on your own opinion of yourself. Yeah, you do not need to prove yourself to anyone. Yeah, the only person that needs to accept you is yourself. It's what I teach my little girl, and as a result, she thrives in life, doing things, challenging herself, failing, but then bouncing back, because she knows she's not trying to prove herself to anyone. Yeah. She's doing this from a place of joy and exploration and play, not from a place of fear.
When we were younger, a lot of what we would do would be just for the enjoyment of it. Yes. You know, we would make noise on a musical instrument, not caring how it sounds, but just for the love of it. We would paint with our fingers, you know, not really caring how it looked, but just because we enjoyed the feeling of creation. I find that my meditation for myself is when I just pick up a camera, roll of film, and just go and shoot for myself, you know. Where do you think this kind of judgment for other people's validation has come from?
Okay, I'll explain it. So let's go back to when we were born. When we first came into this world, did we have a set of rules or beliefs that we felt we should be using to judge ourselves? No. We came with nothing, with no baggage. And yet, what then happens is that as we grow, we're surrounded by people, of course, and we've got our parents, we've got our siblings perhaps, we've got friends, we've got family members, we've got our teachers when we go to school. And they start teaching us the rules of society, what's right, what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. So then we take this on board and we start developing our own sets of rules, largely when we're younger based on other people's rules. Now, because we're social creatures and we want to interact and we want to be loved by others, we get to a stage, and typically it's kind of in our childhood, where we feel that, okay, if we do not obey the rules that we've been set, then we fear that we will not be loved. And so that's where this fear of not being good enough comes through. So your question is, where does this come, this judgment? It comes from the fact that we're taught a set of rules by which we are told that this is how we should live. So there's a clue. Whenever you hear yourself say should, or someone else say should, recognize that that is simply a rule. It's a rule set by that person, or it's a rule set by society. Okay? Or it could be a rule set by yourself. Okay? And you use those rules to judge yourself. And then for coming back to the principles I live by, you then make your love for yourself conditional. I will only love myself if I do this. Yeah, I should do that, otherwise I don't deserve love. And that's where it comes from. Now, again, this is all about becoming awareness. The Toltecs, I mentioned earlier that there's these wise Mexican people that, and they call that domestication, the rules of society that by which you live. So recognize that those rules are simply other people's perspective or their point of view, and you shouldn't judge yourself by them, because if you do, you're making your love for yourself conditional, and that's not being kind to yourself. And what you'll find is when you reduce, ideally stop the judgment of yourself, you'll find a great peace, because you accept everyone for who they are. You respect them for their opinions. You have an open mind to their opinions, but when you converse with people, you're engaging with them, okay, with your set of own beliefs, as opposed to trying to impose your beliefs on them. And you feel great peace when you do that.
When we talk about not being good enough, and these being beliefs that we're taught, other people's beliefs, I think there's definitely a link with parents and not achieving what they may have wanted for you. I remember a time when I was very young that my father didn't talk to me for 2 weeks because I didn't get into a particular school that he'd wanted me to get into. You know, I think we always want to live up to our parents' expectations of us. They themselves not understanding what we can achieve if they just support what we're capable of. How would you kind of deal with this emotion of not maybe living up to your parents' hopes and dreams?
No, it's a very good question, and it comes back to judgment, doesn't it, really? When you think about it, that when there are expectations either set by others, in your case your father, or you set your own expectations, and then when your reality doesn't match up to the expectations, so your expectations might be here and your reality might be here. When there's a gap between your reality and your expectations, you feel sad. That sense of self-judgment that you are not good enough. So then what I would ask in that situation is, does that serve you? Does that bring you happiness by judging yourself? It's, of course, have goals, thrive to improve, yeah, but don't do it from a place of fear that you won't be loved. Do it from a place of love, yeah, a desire to grow. And so there's the difference, because then even in your journey as you grow and kind of reach those kind of higher levels, you're doing it, that whole journey becomes joyous, as opposed to you will only be happy once you reach that goal. So really that's the message there, is that it comes back to not judging. And when you become aware of that it's okay to have goals, okay? But even today you are perfect just the way you are. And that's the important thing, to truly believe that. You are perfect just the way you are today, but that doesn't mean you cannot improve. And that brings that unconditional respect and love for yourself. And it's linked to that, it's saying that you are always doing your best. If today you decide you want to stay in bed all day, that's okay, because today that is your best. Because what that does, by recognizing that you are always doing your best, is it avoids that self-judgment and that self-abuse that we do. And this is not denial, this is not kidding ourselves, yeah? Because of course there are things we can do, improve, but that's not the purpose of life, to constantly be judging. It doesn't serve us, yeah? And it's linked to fear. Instead, you're doing it from a place of love. Because in the same way, and I'll give you probably, I think, what the best example of this is, that when you have a young child who's not yet walking, so typically around the age of 1, children start to walk. Do you hear parents or kind of supporting family say to the child, "Oh, you fell down, that's not good enough"? You don't hear parents ever say that. You say, "Well done, good try, now try again." So that's how we talk to our children when they're 1. So what changes? Yeah, expectations increase, and self-judgment and judgment by others increase. So how about next time you approach something, say, even if you fall down or fail, okay, say, "Well done, good try, let's try again." Same way as you do for a child as they're learning to walk.
I think it's really important to not see a failure as the end of, but rather a starting point for a new go, you know, a new place to start from, and to improve and to learn from your previous.
Yes, exactly. So everything is either a lesson or a blessing. So we can learn from past experiences, but let's not go back and keep judging ourselves on those past experiences, saying we're not good enough. That's not, it doesn't serve us to do that. So let's stop doing that. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. We should say that these are simply our opinions from our own learnings and what we've experienced in our lives, and in no way are they representing an authoritative view or a replacement for any professional advice that you may feel that you need. We do hope you enjoyed it though and found it useful. Then please leave some comments down below on the channel. We'll come back and try and cover topics that are of interest to people. And do subscribe so that you can catch our future videos as well. Thank you.